Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today I want to play the USS Atlanta, and the scene that you're about to see is the usual experience. I just spawned, and very often I got conquest and encounter mode, and I had to engage enemy cruisers without cover at the range of 9 or 10 kilometers, and the Atlanta has some problems in this scenario, despite the first scene, which was more of a lucky freak shot shell than anything else. So I'm sorry, I know it's another ship video, a lot of you don't really like them. I shall bring to you some footage of planes and tanks in the next few days, I promise, but I just wanted to get into the patch, into the ships, the cruisers, etc. And yeah, there I got blapped by a Chapayev, what a surprise, in the first few minutes, or in the very first minute of this game. What you're about to see here is the optimal situation for the USS Atlanta. Now, what is so special about the USS Atlanta? Well, this is the incarnation of Dakka Dakka. It has up to 16 5-inch 38 guns. That means with the one wing turret layout, you actually have 14 guns in a broadside, firing a shell every 3 seconds. That is not quite as fast as the USS Sumner or USS Somers with their 2.8 second reload, but 3 seconds, that is still quite a lot. And the gun handling is just superb. Very fast turret rotation speed. The super firing forward and super firing rear turrets have a 360 degrees field of rotation. That is really nice, and that is then also complemented by some torpedoes and some 1.1 inch or 28 centimeter anti-aircraft batteries. Now, there is one thing. If you encounter a single destroyer, this ship will absolutely wreck it, absolutely melt it, and that is just really fun. The next thing is that this light cruiser is pretty good at anti-aircraft work, but it's not so good in doing both at the same time. It just has, this is not World of Warships basically, because I know it sounds obvious, but the 5-inch guns, they either shoot at a destroyer or at a plane, and the proximity fuse shells, together with the fast rate of fire, the amount of guns, the amount of turrets, and also the proximity fuse shells, that's quite efficient. But very often a plane just YOLOs through and just still gets the torpedo off. Despite it being dead, it still can drop it. And ships in War Thunder, even though they are light cruisers and you might expect them to be pretty nimble, they behave like bricks. That's just how it is. You have to deal with it. But dodging torpedoes, that's more a, you have to foresee where the torpedoes are coming, you have to look for the white lines, and you have to also watch out for planes, and when they drop the torpedo, turn into them, etc. But let's talk about here the scene at hand. I am not going with the other cruisers. Yes, there is a Kirov with me, but he shouldn't be here. He should be on the open ocean, trying to blap everything else with its massive sap shells. Here I just slaughter some bots, and this is actually the most representative battle of what the ship can do under the best of circumstances, where the enemy is coming at it one by one. The ship's advantage is the gun handling, the sheer Dakka Dakka, the rate of fire. It's not the armor, it's not the survivability, and it's also not long-range engagements. It's most likely short-range ambushes and also just disabling the enemy, where the rest of your team tries to tank for you. Now, this is a very small niche within War Thunder Naval Forces, I have to say, but this is where the ship excels and is best at. I know a lot of ships are good at doing this, but this ship really suits the short range close quarters meta. You even have some torpedoes. They are not the best, they are not the most numerous, but at least you have some of them. If a lot of your gun turrets are knocked out, or you just cannot disable the enemy, or you can hide behind an island and drop the torpedo and then just hide behind the island again. So the next thing is that we have 3 different shell types. You have your stock HE, you have the proximity fuse HE, which is good versus aircraft, and you have the AP. The AP is a little bit of a mixed bag, and it's most likely a death by 1,000 cuts or a random freak shell, but it is better than nothing, and it's not nothing. I mean, you still can knock out the turrets of almost every ship that there is in the game, except for the likes of Hippa, Chapayev and Brooklyn, because they have actually some reasonable amounts of armor on the turret faces, which helps them quite a lot. But a lot of other ships like Kirov or then also the Mogami, they're quite easy to disable them. And with your insane amount of DPM, you know, we're talking about 280 shells per minute, you can even spam them to death at longer ranges, up until the point that you get return fire. Now, the huge problem with the survivability of this ship lies also within its strength, and that is the amount of turrets, the amount of guns, the high rate of fire. Those require a lot of shells to be transported through the ship, and the ship has a considerable amount of ammunition. We're talking about 7,200 rounds of 5-inch shells. So that means that you have a lot of ammo racks or magazines, if you will, that are just below the waterline, and they're not really protected by armor, but more by fuel tanks and some armor that is less than 32 millimeters thick. The Citadel armor protection itself is 89 millimeters, together with 89 millimeters of bulkheads. Your turrets are also pretty weak with less than 32 millimeters of armor. That means also HE splash or 20 millimeter gunfire can and will disable your ship, so or your turrets rather. But you know, you have a lot of them, so you can always kind of fire back, and that is quite something. So the ship is hilariously fun if you manage to pull off an ambush, if you just attack the enemy at short range, if you can continuously change the angle of attack, because then the enemy has to see how he can get guns on you, while you have never a problem to bring at least 4 turrets to bear, or let's say 3, and that is quite something to have. The proximity fuse shells sometimes does this weird thing that it behaves like an HE shell, but then it behaves like a proximity fuse shell and explodes when the enemy is shooting at you with the light gun systems, 20 millimeter, even 50 cals, and then they let the shells explode in mid-flight. But you need to take them and the armor piercing as a mixture, because you only can equip 2 shell types. That is a disadvantage for some ships, but it really hits hard this one because it just could perform better, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, with so many shells fired, even the low ammunition costs of the proximity fuse shells, when you fire thousands of them, it just costs you a little bit. 3 civilians per shot. But again, that can add up to over 21,000 civilians if you fire all your shells. I know that's not that expensive if you compare it to some of the tank shells, but it's still a considerable amount that you have to take into account. And again, the stock HE is for free and always detonates on contact. When it comes to planes, the ship is pretty good if you are in a 1 versus 1 situation, but when you fight other destroyers, you're very often distracted, and your 1.1 inch or your 28 centimeter gun systems, they are not really that great. They are more like 25 millimeters of the Japanese, and I don't like them. So here we have the post-battle results: 68,500 civilians for 9 kills, 1 cap, 1 assist, and that was the most successful game that I had. I had another game where I had 11 assists and 3 kills, got a bit more for that, but we end up with over 6,000 research points and 2,919 score points. So this is the USS Atlanta, not all that great at long ranges, and not really a great anti-cruiser, but it melts destroyers. It's good in 1 versus 1s at close quarters, and this is a pretty difficult niche to find for the ship. But I have to say, just to throw out the shells, just to disable an enemy, it's quite fun. And having said this, I hope that you found the video entertaining. If you liked it, please give it a like. Subscribe if you want to see more. Let me know in the comment section what you think about this. I promise that I'll be back with some tanks and some planes in the near future. And we'll see each other on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.